Hi, my name's Ken Fisher and this is LiveLink Training. Now this is a companion tutorial created to help you in completing the pencil sketch tutorial. Each of the skills and tools will be highlighted and explained. Ideally you should work through this before trying out the main tutorial and keep it by your side while you're working through the full pencil sketch tutorial. Now don't forget, if you're a fan of the printed page, just click on the More area underneath the video on YouTube and look for any links for any download files or work files. Now the first thing we will need to do is to be able to duplicate a layer. Now there's 4 methods in which you can duplicate a layer. Now the first one is we can right click on the layer, and from the contextual menu we can select duplicate layer. Okay, that's one method. Or if you like your menus, you could go to layer and duplicate layer. Exactly the same place. The third method, we can drag the layer over the new layer icon down at the bottom of the layers panel. And my favourite is Control and J if you're on a PC and Command and J if you're on a Mac. So I'm just going to use that now. I'm going to press Control and J because I'm on a PC, and that will duplicate my layer for me. Okay, the second thing we need to be able to do is to add adjustment layers. Now these are down at the bottom here of the layers panel to start with. So if I want to add an adjustment layer, I go down to this little black and white circle icon here, and it's got a little triangle at the bottom corner which means it's a drop down menu. So if I click and hold my mouse button on that, it'll open up the menus. And here I can pick from whichever one of these I like. So let's say I'll pick a levels one. So I just click on it and there it goes. It puts a levels adjustment layer on the top of the stack, and I've just brought it in. This is the actual properties panel with the levels adjustment layer in it. Now if you don't like that, I'll just get rid of that. What you can do, you can again, if you're a menu person, you can go up to the layer menu and do new adjustment layer, and that'll bring you this exactly the same set of menus up here. And I'll pick again, let's say I'll pick the curves one this time. It brings up and asks me, do I want to name it? Well, I'll leave it at curves 1. I'll click OK, and there it goes. It puts the adjustment layer on top of the stack, on the top of the active layer. And then we can play around with this adjustment layer to our heart's content. Okay, the third thing we need to be able to do is to change the blend mode. Now blend modes are different mathematical methods for blending a layer with a layer underneath it. Now you can't use any blend mode unless you've got at least 2 layers, because you need a layer and then a layer to blend it with basically. So you see it's a bit greyed out, so we can't use it. So well, let's put a layer on. So we'll go down and we'll select an adjustment layer, and just for this example I'll choose solid colour, and I'll pick a bluey colour, something like that, and click OK. So I've now got a solid colour fill adjustment layer over the whole image, so you can't see anything that's going on. Now we can blend by using opacity, so I could click on the opacity and I could drop this down to say near on 50%. And when we're at 50%, this looks, it's not bad, it's a nice blend, but it's not dramatic. And all this is doing is dropping out every other pixel. So at 50% opacity, every other one of the pixels is transparent, so it gives you this look of a blend. Now that's not particularly great really. Now for more dramatic things we can use the blend modes, and the blend modes are where this says normal. If we click this little drop down box where just next to the word normal, we get the list of blend modes, and these are all in some cases quite complex mathematics that you never have to know. All you have to do is just understand roughly what they do and just try them out and experiment. And basically we've got them in sections. So here we've got the top 2. Well, there's normal and dissolve. And dissolve really isn't a use in an ornament. It's a bit as good as a chocolate fire guard. And then underneath that, we've got some blend modes that are in sections again. And the top one here gives you a little bit of a clue. So the darken blend mode will darken. And that's the same for all these other blend modes in between these two lines. So they all have different mathematical ways of blending, but they will always show you the darkest colour from either of the layers. So we've got darken, and we've got multiply. That tends to be a little bit more intense. Oh, I don't like that one. And we've got colour burn, and that really gets intense. And linear burn, that's all right. And then darker colour. And well, if that's the look you're looking for, that's fine. But in this case, not so good. And then we've got the lighten blend modes. So here we've got lighten itself. We've got screen. We've got colour dodge, and we've got linear dodge addition, and we've got lighter colour. And then we've got overlay. Now overlay is the start of the contrast adjusters. So these are making the lights lighter and the darks darker on either layer with the blend. We've got soft light, which is probably around about half of the overlay effect. We've got a hard light, we've got vivid light, we've got linear light, we've got pin light, and we've got a hard mix, which is a real intense effect. And then we've got some really artistic ones. We've got difference, we've got exclusion, subtract. Oh, I like subtract. Yeah, we've got subtract, and we've got divide. And they're all quite complex maths, but you never have to know. You just flick through them until you're going, oh, I like that one. I think hue is a cracker. I really like that one. And then we've got the saturation. We've got colour. Colour's a really popular one for burning the colour into the background detail. And we've got luminosity. That's about it. Yeah, I think the best one out of that lot, yeah, that really has took my eye. That's the hue one. So that's selecting a blend mode. What we do, we go up to where it says normal, we click the little triangle, and then we can scroll down and we can click on any one we want. So I'll try overlay, and we've now selected a blend mode. But we do need two layers, one layer above the other, to be able to use it, because you need to blend the top layer with the layer underneath it. Right, number 4. What we need to be able to use is the invert command. Now there are 3 methods of invoking the invert command, but first, what does it do? Well, it actually changes every colour to its exact opposite. So you can see here on the colour wheel, so anything that's like bluey colours will end up being reddy browny colours. Anything that's red will come out like a greeny colour, and anything that's yellowy will come out like a magenta colour. So it actually makes a colour into its exact opposite. So let's see that in action. We can do it 3 different ways. The first one is with a keyboard shortcut, and this is my favourite, which is Control and I if you're on a PC and Command and I if you're on a Mac. So I'll just press Control and I, and that inverts all the colours. Now the second method we can use, we can go up to the image menu and the adjustments, and we can select invert. Now that may have gone off the edge of the recording screen, but trust me, it's there. Or next method, we could use an adjustment layer. Now if we want to be non-destructive, we can do this. We can go down to create new filler or adjustment layer and select invert. And that will put an invert adjustment layer on the top of the stack, and it will invert all the image for us. Let me just get rid of that. And we can see here that if we turn this on and off, we'll turn this off, and you can see that here we've got the skin tones, which are quite red in nature, and the background is quite blue. So let's have a look. So we've got some blues and we've got some reds. So let's use the invert command here again, like that. We'll switch the layer back on, and now you can see that all the red tones of the skins, they've basically turned to blue, which is roughly the opposite. So it's something like from over here, it's turned it to blue. And then everything that was blue in here, it's turned it somewhere out here to reddy yellowy colours in here. So it's coming out like a browny colour. So that's it. How to invert a colour with the invert command. Number 5, let's convert to a smart object. Now there are 3 methods of converting to a smart object. First one, we can right click on the layer and select Convert to Smart Object. Number 2, we can go over to the filter menu and we can select Convert for Smart Filters. This does exactly the same thing. It converts it to a smart object. And 3, we can go to the layer menu and choose Smart Objects, Convert to Smart Object. All 3 take you to the same place. I'll click on that one to do it. And now you'll see down in this little corner here, we've got a smart object symbol. This is telling you that this is a smart object, and now the image itself is inside an indestructible envelope. So that's converting to a smart object. We can right click on the layer, we can go up to the filter menu, or we can go to the layer menu and down to smart objects and convert to smart object. Step 6, we're going to add a filter to an image. Now filters are things which we add to change the nature of an image. Now they're up here in the filter menu. Now there's a couple of different areas. There are things which we can add as a filter now, such as adaptive wide angle, the camera raw filter, lens correction, and there are the filters that come in the menus here. So we've got the 3D filter and we've got the blur filters, which are very popular. And down at the bottom we've an area that you can add on third-party filters that you load into Photoshop. Now there is also the filter gallery, and this is a whole gallery of all different filters that you can apply to your images. So if I click on filter gallery, it brings up the filter gallery dialog, which is quite big. Now the dialog here is quite large, but if I want to see what the image is doing, if it's too big, then I click this little minus button here. And you can see it brings the image down to I can actually see it. And at the moment we're applying the palette knife filter, and you can click and try different filters to your heart's content. And you can multi-stack filters. So if I wanted to put 2 filters on, then I could click the new effect layer, and now it's put me 2 dry brushes on, but now I can go and change the second one. So I could say I could have the palette knife and the dry brush. But the problem with this is the moment I click OK, this has now irrevocably damaged the image. It's changed the nature of the image. So if I thought, well, I think I've gone a little bit overboard on that one, it's really difficult for me to go back and change it easily. So long as I'm in Photoshop, I can do edit and undo, which I'm going to do to get back to my starting point. But I can't make little micro adjustments. It's not that easy. Now that's why in step 5 we converted to a smart object, because converting to a smart object preserves the original image, and the filters sit on the outside. You'll see if you look in the layers panel here, I've just got a background layer now. So I've got a brand new layer that looks like this. So if I wanted to get back, certainly after I've closed Photoshop down, if I come back tomorrow, it is impossible for me to get back to where I started. Right, so let's do that. I'll just do edit and undo filter gallery. So that takes me back to where I was. This is my start image. And that's why in step 5 we converted to a smart object. So do you remember how to do that? Yeah, of course you do. I'm going to right click and I'm going to select convert for smart object. So now I've got a smart object layer. So when I go to my filter menu now, everything looks the same. So I'll go to filter gallery and I'll add, say, well, you can have a look at the plastic wrap filter or whatever. Let's have a look at some stylized ones. Oh, we've got one called glowing edges. So if I click on glowing edges, I'll just come down a little bit to show you that, and there we've got the glowing edges filter that's picked out all the edges. I've also got a dry brush filter on because these are sticky, so let's get rid of that. I'm going to click on it and then click on the delete layer effect, and now I'm just down to my glowing edges filter, and I can change any of these sliders here. But then when I click OK, I've now got my original layer protected inside its indestructible envelope, and I've got my smart filter gallery on a mask actually outside the actual image itself, and it's like tagged on. So if I decide now, ooh, I think that was, I think I'd rather do something a little bit different, then I can just double click my filter gallery and it takes me back into the filter gallery, exactly where I was when I started, and I can do things like I can change it and modify it, make it a little bit stronger, say a bit more edge width, and then when I click OK, I'm back there, and again I've not damaged this, and I can go back in as many times as I want and make changes. So that's adding a filter, but also one of the benefits of changing to a smart object first. And we get to the filters through going to the filter menu, and we go down to filter gallery if we're going into the filter gallery, or we've got all these that are in the menu themselves. The blur one that's really popular is Gaussian blur, and the blur gallery where we've got field blur, iris blur, tilt blur, path blur and spin blur. So that is the filters. Number 7, we're going to desaturate an image. Now there are two methods basically that we can do this. We can go up to the image menu, down to adjustments, and then down to desaturate. That's the first method. Or we can use, as you can see here, we've got a cute little keyboard shortcut. If you're on a PC, it's Shift, Control and U. If you're on a Mac, it's Shift and Command and U. So we'll just try that one. So we can go to the menu, or we can do Shift, Control and U, and that desaturates. I'll just show you the other one. If we go Edit and step backward, I can go to Image and Adjustments and down to Desaturate. There we are, two methods for desaturating an image. Now there are many times when we need to reset the foreground and background colours to black and white, or we may need to toggle them, so we need to make the foreground colour the background colour and the background colour the foreground colour. And we can do these a couple of different ways. One of them is by these two little icons on the top here, and this one on the left hand side, this is to reset the foreground and background colours to black and white. And this little bendy arrow here, this is to toggle the foreground and the background colours. Now that's fine, you can go and click on them and do the business. But there is also some keyboard shortcuts. Now the letter D on the keyboard, that resets the foreground and background colours to black and white. So I'm just going to press the D key, and you'll see that does exactly what it says on the tin. It resets the foreground and background colours to black and white. And then if I wanted to toggle them, if I wanted to make the background colour the foreground colour and the foreground colour the background colour, then I can press the X key. So the D key resets the foreground and background to black and white. The X key is a quick way of toggling. So if I just keep pressing the X key, you'll see it'll just keep toggling. So whichever way you want, if you're in the wrong place, you just press the X key to get you to the right place. And if you forget, if you hover over, I'll just hover over that. It says default foreground and background colours. Just a minute, I get it back. And there's the D in brackets, that's the keyboard shortcut. And this one, it says switch foreground and background colours, and there's the X, that's the keyboard shortcut in brackets for you. So that's it. A couple of different ways to reset the foreground and background colours to default to black and white, and to toggle them. Number 9, change the brush opacity and the flow. Okay, well to do this we need to be in the brush tool. Now you can go and click on it here in the toolbox, or you can press the B key and that'll select the brush tool for you. Now if you look up here in the tool options bar, we can see that we've got the opacity and the flow both set at 100%. Now we'll start with the opacity. Now if I want to change the opacity on the fly to make it nice and quick for me to do it, rather than I can go and click the slider and I can drop the opacity by moving the slider, and that's fine. But if I want to do it a little bit quicker and a little bit slicker, then what I can do is use a keyboard shortcut. Now while ever I've got the brush tool active, it's just a case of pressing a key on the keyboard. So if I press the 5 key, that goes to 50%, the 7 key, it'll go to 70%, 6 and 6, it'll go to 66%, And if I press the 0, that'll take it back up to 100%. Now the flow, again, you can see that's 100%. All I do now is I just add the shift key in. So if I want to change the flow to 50%, I hold the shift key and press the 5 key on the keyboard. Shift and 6 will do 66%, and shift and 0 will take me back up to 100% again. Okay, so that's changing the opacity and the flow on the fly of the brush tool. And I can do that if I want to change the opacity. I just press a number key, and if I want to change the flow, I hold the shift key down and I press a number key as well. Right, number 10, we might want to add a new empty layer. Now there are 3 methods for adding new empty layers in the layers panel. Now we can do this from the menu. We can go up to the layer menu, down to new, and onto layer. Or we've got the keyboard shortcut that you can see there. If you're on a PC, it's Shift, Control and N. If you're on a Mac, it'll be Shift, Command and N. Or another way, that if you're actually in the layers panel itself, there's a little cute one that you can do there. You can basically go down to the bottom of the layers panel, and there's a little icon here next door to the trash can. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you any minute. It says create a new layer. If I click on that, it creates me a new empty layer. And if you want to rename it, if you hold the Alt key down and click on it, it'll bring up the new layer dialog, and you can rename it and then click OK. Okay, that's 3 different methods for creating a new layer in the layers panel. We can use the layer menu, we can use the keyboard shortcut of Shift, Control and N, or Shift, Command and N if you're on a Mac, or we can use the new layer icon down at right at the bottom of the layers panel. Number 11, we need to select and use the colour picker. Now if we look over at the bottom of the tools panel, we can see we've got 2 colour swatches. We've got a foreground colour and we've got a background colour, and both of them have their own colour picker. Now we'll see that if I click in the foreground colour just once, it'll open up its colour picker, the foreground colour picker. Now this vertical bar here is like your major colour, so you can click in it. So if you say, well, I want something blue, you can click in there, or you can click and drag up and down with this slider. So I'll settle for blue, but at the moment I haven't picked a colour. All I've done is said, well, I want something bluish. What I need to do then is to click in this square here to select a colour. So I click in there, and you can see I've now selected that specific colour that I've clicked on. Once I've done that, I can click and move this around. Now what I've done with this vertical bar is I've selected the hue, I've selected the colour. Now when I'm inside here, I can select the luminosity or the saturation. Now if I move this, if I click and drag up and down, then I'm changing the luminosity. The colour's getting lighter if I move up, and it's getting darker if I move down. I can also change the saturation, and that's left to right. If I move left, I'm getting less saturated, and I'll go right down to grey, which is no colour at all. And if I move right, I will right over to get full saturation of whatever hue that I've actually selected. Okay, so I can position that in a place where I think I want it. That's the colour I fancy. And then I click OK, and you'll see now that that will appear in the foreground colour swatch. And exactly the same happens if I click on the background colour swatch. I've got my colour picker for my background colour, and again I can select the hue that I want with the vertical bar and the slider, and I click in, and then I can select the saturation by moving left to right, and the luminosity by moving vertically, by moving up and down. Okay, that's being able to manipulate and select colour in the foreground and the background colour pickers. And then I'll click OK, and you can see that now that green colour is now set as my background colour. In the tutorial we'll be using what's called Blend If. Now Blend If is an advanced blending mode. It allows us to blend 2 layers together, or what's in one layer onto a bottom layer depending on the luminosity of both layers. Now we'll just demonstrate that. Let's use I'll go to a solid colour adjustment layer, and we'll pick say a blue, a bit more saturated, and then click OK. Now blend if is in the effects panel. Now I can do that by going to the FX and I can click on that, or there's a little secret area just here, there's an invisible button, and if you double click there it will bring up the layer styles dialog, and here it is, it's quite big, and the bit we're after is in the middle, and it's here, it's called blend if. Now here we've got 2 layers and we've got some sliders, little sliders. And this is saying, right, we've got a top layer, which is, in our case, is the blue colour fill layer, and we want to blend it with the bottom layer. Now what I need to do is to move one of these sliders. So let's move this highlight slider, and we'll see that as we move it, what we're saying is, well, anywhere that's lighter than this 198, I want to see the image underneath. And of course these are the lighter areas, so these areas are lighter than 198 as a luminosity. But you can see that it's quite a harsh transition. It's quite, it's not very nice as a transition. But what we can do is split these sliders. So if I hold the Alt key down and I click on this slider, it splits it into 2. And now if I drag this left hand slider, you'll see the transition will get nice and soft. So we can get some really interesting effects by just playing around with these sliders. And we can do it with any of the sliders, but this is called blending with blend if, and it's an advanced blending mode, but it is very easy to use and it is very, very effective. And I'll click OK, and now we've got quite an interesting effect using the blend if. And number 13 is downloading brushes into Photoshop. Now these are resources that you download from the internet. Now if you've downloaded the pencil sketch brushes from the brusheasy.com, they will appear in your downloads folder, both on both platforms, on the Mac and on a PC. I've created my own little set of resource folders on my Google Drive, and one's called brushes. So what I've done is I've transferred that into my brushes folder. And if I double click on that, you'll see I've got a couple in here. I've got an explosion brush, and I've got this DXBX from Brusheasy. Well, this is the actual, what they call the ABR file, which is the brush file. And that's the folder I'm going to be targeting when I'm actually in Photoshop. Okay, so I just wanted to show you that. Now I'm going to open my brushes panel, and here it is. This is my brush picker. And there's a little cog wheel up here, and if I click on that and I go down to load brushes, I click on that, and then I'm going to navigate to where my brushes are. Well, I know that they are on my Google Drive and in my downloads folder and in my brushes. And now you can see I'm at this Brusheasy download, which is an ABR file. So if I click on that and then click on load, that will load those brushes in. And if you just saw it happen, here you've got these last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are the brushes that we've just downloaded from Brusheasy and we've installed into Photoshop. And if I click on one of them, you'll see that it now sets that as my current brush. Now it is quite big, so let's paint in, I'll just show you, we'll just paint in white. We'll set white as a foreground colour, and we'll do that. So that's one of the brushes that you can download from the brusheasy.com site and install into Photoshop. Well, that's it, all the skills you will need to know to have a go at the how to create a pencil sketch effect tutorial, and that's next in the playlist. Now there is a PDF that I've created of all these steps, all 13 steps for you, and you can download that by going to the More section and clicking on the download link underneath the video. And there is also a PDF of the actual pencil sketch tutorial as well. I hope all this has been useful for you, to give you a little bit of preparation before you attempt the tutorial. If you like what I do, please click that subscribe button while you're watching the video and help me to grow my Photoshop learning community. That would be great. I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.